Success shouldn't cost you your nervous system, but she's the one who showed us how. She took one of the most loaded, intimidating topics for women, the one laced with shame and fear, money, and turned it into something clear, a pathway home. Have you ever looked at money as a mirror of our worth? A rhythm that must sync with our bodies, not battle them? As the extension of your inner harmony. This woman helps women sync their ambitions with their cycle, and such discovery will change your life. She helped thousands of women, and today she will share her knowledge with you. Ladies and ladies, welcome, Kate Northrup. This is Things Your Mother Never Told You. Let's begin. Kate, I am so excited to have this conversation with you and so thankful that you said yes to being here with me.
Thank you for having me.
You teach and you have helped thousands and thousands of humans, it sounds like primarily women, as it relates to one of the hardest topics for women to talk about. And we're going to talk about why we think that's the hardest topic. But money, you are the money queen.
I don't know how that happened. Yeah.
Tell me, how did you even come to be, of all the things to guide women on in the world, you landed in this place that said, I'm going to dedicate my life to helping women establish wealth and abundance?
Well, I think, as is probably true for most people, I don't know that these are conscious decisions. I actually have a degree in art history, but so like completely unrelated to what I do. But when I was in second grade, I made a little brochure, like a little about me brochure, and it said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said I wanted to be an accountant.
Oh.
Which now that I have two little girls, I can tell you that's an unusual thing for a 7-year-old to say.
Yes. I didn't even know what an accountant was when I was 7.
And I just knew I was into money. I started my first business with my sister when I was 7. And
what was the business?
Never stopped making money since.
And what was this business?
It was called
7?
Queen Anne's Lace and Katydids. We sold homemade jewelry and bouquets of wildflowers on a little island off the coast of Maine.
Are we in a storybook right now? What's happening?
Yeah.
And I love that it had the name Queen in it.
Yes, right. Queen
And
Anne's Lace and Katydids, because my sister's name is Anne. And I'm Kate, but my family calls me Katie.
Oh.
I know, it's pretty good. And we actually got like represented in the local store. Like we got the lady who owned the store on the island to like carry our goods.
Of course you did. Of course you did at 7. Already an entrepreneur.
7 and 9. We were 7 and 9. Anyway, I have just always been like interested in money energetics, interested in just the concepts around women and money. I've just been into it. But I didn't go like the traditional, economist route or financial planner route or anything like that. But I did start reading everything I could get my hands on when I was about 14.
So you took a divergence at some point and decided to go into the arts, and then you came back, or did you?
Well, actually what happened was I was in college and I wanted to create my own major, and I wanted to call it the business of aesthetics because I thought maybe I'd become an art dealer. I was super fascinated in the business end of art and how commerce works around art and how is it that we commodify beauty, and which is so related anyway to what you do, like just I was into that, but I went to Brown, and you weren't allowed to say the word business there. It's like very like liberal arts. They hid all the business classes inside the engineering department, and they were like, no, you can't do that. So I was like, fine, I'll do art history because it requires the least number of classes to complete, and that means I can do whatever else I want. And one of the most powerful experiences I had was a course called Entrepreneurship and Good Work. And the question that the program asked was, is it possible to make good money while being happy and doing good in the world all at the same time? And I had this incredible, legendary professor who has now passed. His name was Joseph Middleman, and he changed my life.
Oh my gosh. So such a philosophical question. And that was the opening of a door. And it sounds like in many ways a remembrance back to what you originally loved, connecting and threading all the way through, and now here still on this journey. What I find so fascinating is when I work with women who've been out of the workforce for a while and or are doing something and they're successful but not happily successful and enjoying it.
Yes.
The place I take them back to, Kate, is between their 7 to 9-year-old self.
Yeah.
What did you love doing then? So it's so interesting to hear that what you naturally were drawn to at 7 ends up becoming
I know, it's wild,
your
isn't it?
life.
So cool.
It's just, there are so many threads to that part of us and that little girl and what she just naturally gravitated towards. Oh my gosh.
It's who we are.
It is who we are. And I think we spend a lot of time getting on paths doing what we think other people wanted us to do. We might end up being financially successful, but not happy. And I love how it all just came full circle for you. That is such an incredible story and another testament to how when you're not sure where to begin, you know that the career you're in or you've been out of the workforce for a while raising children, the where to begin is so often rooted back in what did you naturally gravitate to between 7 and 9? It's interesting because I'm curious your thoughts on this. Do you believe that people can make money being themselves?
I love that question. I think some people are designed more for careers where their like charisma or their personality or like, being themselves as more of a character is how they would be making their money, like Oprah, right? Or I don't know, just Oprah's coming to mind. I mean, I guess you and me. Right? Like I certainly make a living being myself. I remember my husband one time, early days, asked me, he was like, do you feel like we have a business or do you feel like you just get paid to journal? And I was like, I feel like I get paid to journal. And I was like, oh, is that not the answer you were looking for? He was trying to get me to take our business more seriously. Anyway, that one's taken a while. But I would love to, and I am really invested in being part of building a world where we can all be supported to be ourselves. I actually believe that quite possibly within our lifetimes, we will be in a post-capitalistic society because of the way technology is changing, because of AI, because of decentralization and the blockchain. I think it is very possible that within our lifetime, our complete understanding of money and currency will be dissolved and we will be living in a different way. And so I would really love to see a world in which everyone can be supported to be themselves. Does that mean we're all going to get paid to be ourselves? I don't know.
Right. It's so interesting what your husband said about your business, because I remember when I really went from the private practice sector into this. Yeah. My husband having this really sweet approach of like, oh, that sounds like fun. Like, well, like kind of, that's a cute hobby. And maybe you'll pick up some money along the way. And now here he is 3 years later, blown away.
It's like, oh, hello, look at you.
Right, because he grew up in that very traditional sense that you go to school for one thing, you do that one thing forever, and that's the system, that's the way it is. It has been fascinating even to watch him and my sons, and my daughter as well, but all of them watch me do this because it's opened up a whole new world for them in considering how they too can make money.
That's so cool.
And I really feel, I mean, of course, I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm not going to take away 27 years of experience working with women. But honestly, I am getting paid in many ways to be myself. Because anyone who knows me well will tell you, similar to you and the conversations we've had being out to dinner, you're the same person, whether you're on a camera, off a camera, at a dinner table, at a dance party, wherever you are, you're the same woman.
Let's be the same women at a dance party sometime, please.
Yes, let's do that. Let's do that with no shoes on. Yeah. But isn't that the most, that's what I want for every single woman, for every human, that you get to do the thing that lights you so up and get paid, and paid really well for it.
Yes.
So speaking of which, let's talk about, what do you believe to be one of the biggest roadblocks when it comes to women charging for what they're really skilled at and being okay with it?
I actually think it's sneaky and not what many people think. The more obvious answer, which is totally also true, is it's a worthiness issue, right? It's like, okay, we don't feel like we're enough, and we don't feel, we have, imposter syndrome. We think we need 25 more degrees, right? The indoctrination of the patriarchy that just being female makes you less than, right? All of that stuff exists. Totally true. And we need to work on those things. But I think an even sneakier thing happening for women is our conditioning to be caretakers and are misunderstanding that charging less is caretaking others. So it's underlying self-sacrificing behavior, and even deeper is a self-absorbed, egocentric tendency to think, I am going to care for this person because I know better than them what they can and can't do with their money. And therefore, I'm going to charge less because I've got my hands in their pockets and I don't trust them to make their own good financial decisions and have the dignity to pay well for what they value. So I think we need to get our hands out of other people's pocketbooks and relate to them on the level of their power from our power without helping energy of just like, this is the investment. Because when we do that, we are then speaking to the part of them that will rise to the transformation available.
Yes. Oh my gosh, this is so powerful. The layers and the nuances in this. You're right, and it is sneaky because it lives way underneath.
Because I think for some of us, and I'm just calling myself out,
Yeah.
there's like this superiority complex of like I've noticed historically of like, oh, I should be making sure everyone else can afford and making sure, and maybe they can't, so I should whatever. And I remember my friend and coach Raw Goddess talked about the people, giving people the dignity of their own investments. And I could never unhear that. I was like, okay, fair.
I'm never going to unhear this. This is really helping me as well. When I think about, as we were talking about even before you got here, you know, talking about a new offer that we are going to be going out with, and the pricing. The pricing is always the big issue, right? And I naturally tend to slide back to the original price that it started at for this idea of like, well, does that make the most sense? Will that? But now this is reminding me to price it in a way that feels really delicious and nourishing to what I know I'm going to offer and the extension of what I will bring, and trust that the right women will feel called for that investment.
Yes, that investment, and that what needs to happen in their lives to organize around that is actually part of the offer itself.
Yes.
Now, I also want to make it clear, I am not somebody who's like, just charge more to charge more.
No.
I'm not saying that charging the right amount is always more. It's not. And I actually am really into accessibility.
Yes.
I create beautiful podcast content like this. I pour my heart into weekly emails. You can get all my books at the library for free. Like, I want that to be true. And when it's time to make an investment, that has an energy around it. But I also want to say, because I hear this a lot, I do not believe in the phrase charge what you're worth.
Okay, tell us more.
And
I hear this a lot.
Yeah, I just don't like it. And I'll tell you
Tell us why.
Because our worth is inherent. How could we possibly charge what we're worth?
There's no price tag even.
That makes no sense.
Yes.
Our worth is infinite, it's inherent, it's ineffable. You could never do anything to become more or less worthy, right? Like a baby is born. They are an unbelievable child of God, worthy beyond our wildest imaginings. You're going to charge what you're worth? Like, no.
Oh, yes.
So then we are having like that. What you're worth is over here. It is a non-commercial conversation. It is not about
It doesn't
the
even
economy.
belong in the...
Does not belong.
No.
And then we are pricing our programs and services. And that has to do with people in their power, the perceived value in the marketplace, the transformation you're offering, and really understanding. And I think like, especially for, you know, people who've been therapists, people who are used to trading hours for dollars.
Yes.
There can be this idea of like, well, they're getting 12 calls and for an hour of my time, XYZ.
Yes.
And we also, as part of the pricing, I think we need to pull out and realize that people are not paying for the amount of time it takes to get the transformation. They're paying for the transformation. So here's an example. When I got home from being up north for the summer a couple years ago, I got back to my condo in Miami and the air conditioning was broken.
Yes.
And I was there with my 2 small children. It was August. It was hot as balls.
I can't even imagine.
And I was like, I naturally, like a strong feminist, I called my husband. I was like, babe, the air conditioning is broken. And he was like, I'll get somebody to take care of it. The guy arrives shortly. Thank goodness. It took him 15 minutes to fix it.
Yeah.
And I think it cost $1,000.
Yeah.
Some people would be like, how dare he charge you $1,000 for 15 minutes of work? No, it did not take him 15 minutes to understand how to fix my air conditioning. It took him years of training. I wanted that transformation to happen as fast as possible. I would have preferred it took 30 seconds.
Oh.
Right? Like, I don't need the amount of time it took to be cool in my apartment. I want it faster. So does everyone else.
Yes.
So, like, please stop thinking about how much time, right? Like, you have 27 years of clinical experience.
Right.
People are receiving that wisdom, that depth as part of your transmission. Yes. So that needs to be factored into your pricing.
Yes.
Not just like, oh, you get 12 hours with me. No.
Right. You're getting a lifetime, 2.5 decades of experience. Wow, this is such an incredible perspective. And I can imagine there are people listening jumping up and down at the freedom. Like, you just feel like liberation when you talk about money. And you have a way of spelling it out and serving it that feels filled with dignity, filled with respect and honor for all parties. It feels just so clean. I love it so much. And so let me ask you this, working with money all of the time, when do you feel most wealthy?
In nature. Always. Swimming in the ocean, in the trees, in the forest, hiking a mountain, hanging out with my bougainvillea plant on my balcony.
Oh, yes.
She's like my little...
That's when you feel your wealthiest, when you are connected.
Yeah, connected to the natural world, for sure.
I love
for sure.
so much. So you talk a lot about if your nervous system, the capacity you have and the ability you have to be in regulation has a lot, like, it sounds like you could understand somebody's ability to hold, to receive, to hold, to expand, to multiply, to continue to call in, to feel safety around money is in relation to their nervous system.
Yes.
Can you talk more about that? Because I could not agree more. And I have so many thoughts swirling in my head about this, but could you speak, because you're the expert on money, could you speak to what you mean about that? That your nervous system really can dictate your capacity to call in, hold, and generate more.
Okay, great. So to start off with, per everything, there's multiple layers here.
Yes.
And when I say, so like, I don't think that the nervous system is our mitigator always of our ability to earn money.
Okay.
It is our mitigator of our ability to feel actual abundance. Because I know people making $300 million or more a year who are trapped in financial anxiety and feeling like it's not enough.
Yes.
And I know people who make $75K a year and live an unbelievably relaxed life of total abundance.
Yes.
So I want to be super clear. The body, the nervous system, does not know math. It has nothing to do with the numbers. And it has everything to do with the environment in which our nervous system was developed, right? It has to do with our ancestors, our collective environment, what was going on when you were in utero, and the environment in your childhood, and not what was actually going on with money, but the story that was being told emotionally and energetically about money. So that creates a thermostat. And that thermostat determines how abundant we can actually feel. Not how much money we can make, how abundant we can actually feel. Because ultimately, people think if I just make more money, eventually it will feel like it's enough.
Yes.
We have thousands of examples where that is not the case.
Yes.
It's the oldest story in the book.
Yes.
Of the hungry ghost of more. And that's not to say that more is bad.
Right.
It's like there's no judgment about the amount, but we need to learn to signal to our bodies, to our subconscious, which is run by the nervous system, that money is safe. Because those who grew up with a lot of wealth tend to have been shamed for that.
Yes.
And those who did not tend to have wounding around that. So we have these imprints emotionally around money, and they live in our nervous system. And then our nervous system dictates 95%, right? Our unconscious and our subconscious is dictating a ginormous percentage of our behavior, 99% probably.
Yes.
And we think I'm doing all the right strategies. Why am I sabotaging myself? Or why did I make more money and then it still doesn't feel like enough? Or why did I make more and then I spent just as much so I have nothing left? And my typical person who I work with is a woman who looks like she has it all together on the outside.
Okay.
With her level of success or status or whatever, she's the responsible one or she's got it together to some degree. But in her storeroom kind of
her
she's
locker.
Don't open that closet. Because there's a history of financial dysfunction and dysregulation. Avoidance, hypervigilance, toggling back and forth between the two, because ultimately her nervous system is in survival mode and has not been calmed down. And she is recreating the same environment from her childhood, despite all her best efforts to not do that, because our nervous system will always choose a familiar hell over an unfamiliar heaven until we learn to update it.
Absolutely. So for those who are listening, if they were to do, obviously, hire you and work with you in all the ways, which we want to talk about in a bit, but prior to that, what's one thing right now, if somebody who's watching this, listening to this says, I'm that person. I had so much financial insecurity growing up, or I had a lot of wealth and I had no friends because of it. Everybody thought I was.
Or my, the wealth situation changed in my family and then my parents got divorced. There's so many stories.
Money represents a.
Yes. And our body is holding these stories. And especially for women, money has so much to do with our sense of security.
Yeah.
Right. And there's so much historical context that we can get into there. But so what do we do?
Yes.
What do we do?
What do we do?
Right? Okay. So here's what's important to know. Our nervous system is always going to be trying to keep us in the narrow band of what is familiar. Okay? That's true in every area of our life.
Right.
Career, parenting, love, pleasure, money.
Yes.
And so what's tricky about that is that all of our money goals tend to be beyond the narrow band of what's familiar, right? And also beyond what our ancestors experienced, what our friends have experienced, in many cases, certainly our immediate family.
Yeah.
And so everything in our unconscious and subconscious is working in opposition to our financial desires. So what we need to learn to do, I mean, yes, fine. It's wonderful to go back and I certainly teach lots of exercises around going back and where did it come from and what's the blueprint and whatever.
Right.
But I also like to just get to the point.
Yeah, I mean, because we can understand it, but understanding it doesn't change it.
Generally not.
That's important to understand. But
some awareness can be a helpful unlock, and you know more about that than I do. But
right,
let's just as a therapist, but let's just say here's the transformation.
Yes,
is that we need to learn to signal to our nervous system, not to our mind, to our nervous system, which is an embodied. It is a feeling. This is not a thought. This is a feeling. And you need to train your body how to feel safe when you're just at the edge of expanding your capacity financially. So, what's an example of that? You are negotiating for your salary at a new job.
Yes.
And you are going to the meeting where you're asking for more.
Yes.
And this is the first time you've actually negotiated for more, because what we know is that the data is that women don't tend to do that, but we need to be.
Right. Yes.
And so that's the time to go inside your body and signal safety. And there's a bajillion different tools that you might use for different reasons at different times, whatever. But I'll just teach you something simple.
Yes.
And that is the havening technique. So the havening technique, do you know it?
No.
Okay,
I'm
great.
excited
We'll do it
to
together.
learn. I'm loving this.
So, and you can use this anytime you're feeling like, oh, I'm about to do something exciting but scary.
Yes.
And I can feel that I'm about to sabotage myself or I'm having butterflies, which there's nothing wrong with any of these physiological sensations. Our body is just experiencing being an animal.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes, I love that.
However, when our nervous system is dysregulated, we lose our ability to operate in our most present, powerful, and whole self, right? We lose our peripheral vision. We lose track of our cognitive power. We lose track of our creative problem solving. We lose track of our magnetism and our ability to just like, hi, like, how are you? I'm here, you know, and just really be present and listen. And that repulses people. And money comes from people. So one of the things we can do is use the havening technique. So all you do is you just take your hands together and you just rub them slowly over the other one. And you can even tell as I do this, the tone of my voice changes.
Yes.
And you can, you know, for those listening, you've got a nice jacket on, but for those who have bare arms available, you can just rub your hands over your arms and do a little up to your shoulders and then down. You can close your eyes. But what I like about the havening technique is you can do this while you're on a Zoom under the camera.
Yes.
So no one would ever know that you're doing it. So I was in a difficult conversation the other day and I was able to do havening right under the camera while I was in that meeting to, in real time, metabolize the stress of that moment so that I could tell my animal body, no need for a fight response, no need for a flight response, no need to fawn, no need for a collapse after this meeting. We're just going to metabolize this stress in real time.
Yes.
And stay present. And then what that does, so you're about to do something scary around money. Maybe it's meeting with your financial planner. Maybe it's having a conversation with your spouse. Maybe it's filling out financial aid paperwork. Like, I don't know what you're doing. Right. Pitching on a webinar.
Right.
All of those things. Then we can do a technique like this. And it is telling your body, we are safe now. And it is, at that moment, expanding your capacity to feel safe with money, specifically with new behaviors and new possibilities around feeling wealthy, feeling abundant, and making big money moves.
Oh, big money moves. You know, it reminds me of one of the archetypes that I work with women is this divine mother within. Because this idea that so many of us, all of us have mothers, but there are very few women who've had the experience of really being mothered. And as you were doing that, it was reminding me of the way a mother would with a child on the first day of preschool or kindergarten.
Totally.
Like, it's going to be okay. You're going to be wonderful. You're going to make new friends.
That is literally what's happening. That's literally what's happening.
This.
And I like these techniques. I mean, I think there's absolutely a place for affirmations. I think there's a place for thoughts work. All of that stuff is beautiful. And any kind of mindset work you do will be massively accelerated when you add in an embodied practice that actually tells the body you're safe. Because our thoughts are not going to signal safety to the body for the most part.
Absolutely. Oh, this is so helpful. Another thought that I'm having is understanding in some of your work how you are a really big advocate for women considering how they could work with their cycles when it comes to productivity, when it comes to building and ideas and creativity and resting. And can you talk a little bit about this? I mean, I also first want to say before we get into this, another thing I love about your work is that you reference the reality that dependent upon socioeconomic status, privilege, situational stress, and what is going on, that there are situations. My mom was one of them, right? Like a single mom on food stamps where it's not that she could not have possibly optimized her situation. She didn't have the skills, she didn't have the knowledge, she didn't have people around her having these types of conversations, right? So that would be an example. And I love that you always pause and say, you also realize that there are aspects of life for certain people where they are in situations that they might not have the privilege of not going to work.
Of course.
Around their cycle, especially
being
if they're working.
I have my period today. Like,
in a world when this, But in a perfect world, in a world we dream of, wouldn't it be amazing if we could find a way to work that way?
Yes. And so for those of us who do have the possibility of taking that time, so it's just the very same thing. Like if you work in a company and you have generous paid time off, you've readjusted and you're a leader in that company, it is up to the leaders in the company, the CEO, the presidents, those people to take that time to give the signal and change the entire system so everyone actually does those things. So part of I think that is where rest becomes a revolutionary act. That being said, yes, like following our own natural rhythms can be one of the most capacity building practices we can do, because it's essentially using our body's innate rhythms and cycles to be a guidepost for how we organize the rest of our lives. And I was really brought to my knees by my first year in motherhood. I had a really traumatic birth. I had a sick baby for a year, and she had to be resuscitated when she was born, and it was just very difficult. It was not. I was like, oh, this is not what I thought motherhood was going to be. She's waking up every 10 minutes at night, scratching herself bloody. Like it would, like her little crib looked like a murder scene. I mean, it was awful. So I was not well.
Understandably.
Mentally and emotionally.
Yeah.
And when she turned 13 months old, I got my period back. And for the first time in my life, I was fascinated by it, which was cool. I was 33 and I was like so psyched about my period. Yeah. And I became pretty obsessed with tracking the different phases of my cycle and tracking. I started a little journaling practice. And so I had really been struggling with insomnia and anxiety at this time. But I started this little journaling practice, and I would write down what phase of my cycle I was in, what phase the moon was in at the time, what sign the moon was in, and what I just generally how I felt. How did I feel physically? How did I feel mentally? How did I feel emotionally? And that little journaling practice saved my life. Like, I did not have insomnia or anxiety anymore
it's like
after about a month because
yes.
I was receiving the steady rhythm of my own self as my steady thing that I could depend on. What we know is that for the female brain, one of the most important elements for thriving is consistent resources that we can depend on, is dependability. And there's so many times in our life when things are really chaotic.
Yes.
And we do not have consistency. Right. But what's so cool is that when you are menstruating in your reproductive years, you do have that consistency. And then any other time, we have the moon and we have the seasons, and we can depend on them. And that Earth is just turning around the sun, and that moon is just cycling the Earth, and it is happening no matter what is going on. And that consistency brings such a sense of innate safety to our lives.
There's such a rhythm and a predictability and an assurance.
Yes, like
these
I
things
know
are
the sun's going to rise tomorrow. I know spring comes after winter.
Yes.
I just know this to be true. I know my follicular phase comes after my menstrual phase. And so for times in the world, in our lives, when things feel really out of control and scary, cyclical living can bring a sense of safety and stability that is really important for our nervous system and for everything else in our lives as well.
My daughter, who is 22, is teaching me a lot about this. Her generation is really...
I know, they're into it. Isn't it cool?
Oh my gosh, and the seed cycling and all of the things. And she's telling me about this time of my cycle, I need to be eating salmon and I need to be eating these seeds versus those. So it's really fascinating how much information and honoring we are bringing to our ways of functioning and success and business building, as opposed to always following like this one track that we've been given and told. Being able to say, actually, as women, I believe there might be a time during my cycle where what I could put out in the world and produce in 24 or 48 hours would be what most people could do in an entire month.
Yep.
But because we try to sparse it out, we find that we're not actually bringing like our most creative essence to our businesses.
Yes,
and the clarity of thinking even.
The clarity of thinking and just that. So if we look at the 4 phases of our menstrual cycle or the lunar cycle, what we find is that there is a phase for every single element of getting a project done. So it's all been divinely mapped out for us if we would actually follow it, as opposed to what we do, which is we try to be in solar energy at all times. So what solar energy is, it's the masculine. It is planning and launching.
Yes.
So it's springtime energy, summertime energy. So in business, we're told in the work world, we're told that the only valuable thing is visible results.
Yes.
Right? That's the masculine, what you can see. Spring, summer. But the feminine is the invisible results. It's the lunar. It is autumn and winter. And
all the seeds she's planting.
Exactly. Yes. Without autumn and winter energy, without the luteal and menstrual phases, we do not have human life on planet Earth. We do not have trees. We would not have grass. We would not have all of the animals. And so our projects are the same. Our creativity is the same. If we can honor the full cycle, we get stronger, more abundant creations that are far more sustainable and maybe even regenerative for ourselves, for our families, for the world, for our businesses. And we can really change the way business is done.
Oh my gosh, I'm loving this so much. I'm so curious, what would you say to a woman like myself who is now at 5 months of no period?
Yeah.
And I have to say, sitting in this position where I am, someone who had very, very intense experience of a period since I was 13 years old, I cannot describe the crazy freedom I feel because I am not as dependent on where I am in my cycle or my flow. So should I be following the...
I love this question so
tell
much.
me what I should be following.
Well, and I just have to, give credit to my mom because this is like really her work in The Secret Pleasures of Menopause and her book, The Wisdom of Menopause. Really, she was like such a pioneer in this area.
The most.
I'm just going to share some Cliff's notes from having grown up with her.
And Christian Northrup, for anyone who's watching and is not sure who Kate is referencing, she was really an original.
She really, yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. So what's really cool in what she taught me is that after menopause, our levels of FSH and LH, which have to do with your ovulation and they're the hormones, they remain at the same level as they are at ovulation for the rest of your life. So you are actually not fertile in the literal baby making sense, thank God. Right. I mean, I just think that it becomes massive fertility energetically.
Right.
So those energetic resources that previously were going towards potential procreation are now reclaimed and able to be used. So you are just like cross-pollination on steroids.
This is how I feel.
Available in a very big way for the world.
This is how I feel.
Not for the world to be taken, but for the world to just be out there in this juicy, delicious, creative powerhouse kind of way. So I just want to say that. And you can just ride that all day long if you want to. And also I have some friends who say that they actually do find that attuning to the moon is really helpful in menopause and beyond, and actually in perimenopause as well, because when our cycle starts to be less predictable, having, again, that predictability of the lunar cycle, especially if you're a woman who has a tendency to do too much, having that new moon day of you know what? I'm just going to put that in my calendar, and that is going to be a day that I am not going to schedule anything. Yes. On that day, if I feel super creative and I want to do a lot of things, fantastic. But at least you have it in there as a protected pause and go within day, because we will have greater intuition when there is more darkness we can see inside.
Yes, it's some of the most unbelievable things for me have blossomed out of those dark days, those quiet days, those hibernation moments, right? Because there's capacity, there's spaciousness to even have a thought or to feel something, right? Oh my gosh. So as we're starting to wrap this up, and I think about how many women I work with that say to me, I really want to call in more abundance. I'm really ready for that for myself. But I fear, and we start to look at like what lives underneath what's holding you back, because the idea is there, the formulation, they start, but then they almost reach this upper limit. And a lot of women tell me that their biggest fear is that there will be too much responsibility. That the more they are able to generate and bring in, the more taxes they'll pay. The more people might have judgments about them. Maybe family members will start reaching out, wanting help or expecting help. They feel like there will just be too much that comes with it, and so it's better to just not. What do you say to that woman?
That really does come up, doesn't it?
It does. I'm
Yeah.
fascinated.
So there's a couple of things. Number one, about people judging you. People are already judging you.
Yeah.
So that's happening.
Can we just
and
say that? Yes.
You are surviving it. Great. So you're just, so carry on. Like that's going to happen now with money, without money. So you might as well just make more money.
Yes.
Because they're judging you for something else and you are surviving and doing great. So, yeah, great. People are going to judge you.
Yes.
The end. And really that's their problem. Okay. And then the other thing though, it's not as though for most people, suddenly you're going to go from making like $100K a year to the next year like making 10 million.
Right.
Right? Now, windfalls happen and I know actually many people who took their business from like 2 to 10 million in 1 year. Like this actually does happen.
Sure.
But for many people, what is going to happen is a more incremental expansion. And what that incremental expansion allows us to do is set boundaries and reassess at every stage so that we're not suddenly like, oh my gosh, I'm making all this money. I have all this responsibility overnight. I don't know. You will grow your capacity as your income goes up. But here's the other thing that we misunderstand. We think that growing our capacity means how much can we hold? And that's the responsibility piece. How much can I hold? No. I did a retreat called Conduit because my understanding is capacity is not about how much we can hold. It's the very same thing as giving birth, where it's how wide can I open? How much life can I let flow through me? That's what abundance is. Our true abundance is from source with a capital S.
Yes.
And there's no limit to what can flow through us as literal electrical conduits, like beings of light. And so when we can learn to signal safety at every new level of expansion, what we find is that actually the more there is requires further relaxation as opposed to further responsibility.
Oh, and it's the absolute opposite of what I think we've been raised to believe.
Yeah.
This is such a beautiful reframe. I am loving this so much. So as our listeners are curious about you and where they can find you and where they can work with you, how would they make that happen? How would they connect with you?
So on Instagram is a great place, at Kate Northrup. If somebody is kind of like wants something else to dig into, I created a free money reset, and it is an audio journey that people can go through. They can just send me a DM on Instagram that says reset, and they'll get it. My books, Do Less and Money, a Love Story, my podcast, Plenty, those are all great places.
And you just exude abundance. Everything about you is abundant. From the original way that I met you and the instantaneous, not just comfort, but welcoming and abundant spirit that you came with. And then the amount of resources and people and connections you've sent my way. To talk to this person and Aram, who's right here behind the cameras right now. I mean, everywhere you turn, you just exude abundance. It's just something that naturally effervesces from your spirit. So for anyone watching and listening, and I don't say this easily, anyone will know that I don't recommend or refer just for the sake of it. Truly just being in your aura, I think, will make people naturally feel the abundance. And you're such a safe human and such a safe woman. And you've exuded that. And I talk a lot about safe women. And I talk a lot about the importance of safe women in our lives. And you have such a safe spirit that makes you just genuinely want other people to succeed. It just really flows from you. And it's the most pure thing I've ever seen. And it's just so refreshing. So first, as woman to woman, colleague to colleague, like, thank you really and truly for being a real, true example of that in the world. It's just such a squeaky clean, beautiful, energetic from you. And For everyone, I think the best thing you could do if you need to create a love story around money, it is to work with you. I think that you are just pure magic.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Kate.